What we're going to be doing over the next few weeks is looking at a series entitled You'll Be Glad You Did. And what I want to do over the next few minutes is I want to tell you a family story. I want to ask you a question. I want to present two contrasts between two interactions that two men had with Jesus. And then I want to tell you why it's important for us to respond a certain way to those interactions today and into the future. So in order to get where we're going today, let me tell you a little story that took place in December of 2019. You see, my wife and I, we had the privilege of taking our daughter and our son to Los Angeles. We went to a special little place called Disneyland. And if you aren't familiar with Disneyland, it is not Disney World. It is on the other coast. It is a smaller park system. There's two of them. There's Disneyland, and then there's California Adventure Park. And that picture that you just saw was us from a long, long way away, taken by a lady that just didn't know how close to get to us. Yeah. Well, we are park people. We went to Disney World the year before. We had a really, really good time around Christmas time in 2018. But this year we were in LA, we're doing a bunch of things, and we had a full day planned. Well, I'm a roller coaster guy. I love roller coasters. I love thrill rides, big fan. And there was this one particular ride that I really wanted to ride when we got there, and it's entitled Incredicoaster. And that's off of the movie The Incredibles. And if you haven't seen The Incredibles, you need to go see The Incredibles. It's incredible. It's on like DVD. It might even be on VHS. It's a really old movie. But either way, this was the ride for me. And I actually got a picture of this ride as well. And that's what it looks like when you walk into the park. It's not the best picture. I was like an iPhone 8. And you see more of like the little light thing in the way. And anyway, it's really cool. You just have to trust me. Well, the whole day, my whole hope was to get on that ride. The problem was we didn't have any fast passes for that ride. And a fast pass, for those that don't know, is just a line like skipper kind of a thing that you get that allows for you to go by people in the standby line and wave at them as you get to ride the ride a lot faster than them. Well, we didn't have that, but we did get to ride the Cars ride, which is super cool. We were in Radiator Springs, and it really looked like we were in actual Radiator Springs. Once you're on the ride, you don't think like you're anywhere else in the park. It's amazing. So we did a bunch of up and down rides throughout the day. We ate a whole bunch of food throughout the day. And then we got to the last Fast Pass ride that we had, which was the Goofy ride. And it looked more and felt more like a mousetrap kind of ride, like you rode in like a little car and you went up and you went forward and you went down. And the kids were really jazzed because we went to an amusement park on vacation that year, and we had ridden a very similar ride to that. Well, they were excited. The problem was when we got to the ride to get on the ride, it said, "Sorry, it's out of order." And the kids were bummed. My daughter was 10, my son was 8, and we were really looking forward to that ride. And unfortunately, it was like, what are we gonna do? But then my wife got this text message. And on the text message, it said, "You now have a free fast pass to any ride in the park until we close." And I was like, yes, yes. Thank you, Jesus. A miracle has happened in California, right here at California Adventure Park. Let me be on a commercial. I was so excited. We had a couple other things that we wanted to do. As the nighttime came around, I was so excited. I was like, guys, this is gonna be the best. This is gonna be awesome. We're gonna love this. And then I began to think about my daughter. And I remember the year before, there were some rides that she really, really loved. And as we got through kind of the day at the California Adventure Park, there were some rides that she really, really loved too, like this ride right here. See the smile? See the guy behind him taking a picture of his kids? We don't know them. But what we do know is that at this moment, my daughter Olive was really, really excited about being on that roller coaster. Well, there were other roller coasters at Disney World that she wasn't so excited to get on. And she would just flat out tell me, no, I'm not riding that. But I thought, hey, she's a year older, she's a year more mature, she's definitely taller, she'll definitely get on the ride. There's no reason. It is the Incredicoaster, you guys. We walk up, it's dark, we walk up to the ride. And by the way, in LA, like it gets dark at like 11 o'clock at night. Whatever, it's fine. But we walk up and we're getting on the ride. And then she looks at the ride and says, "Oh, I'm not doing that." And I'm like, "I'm sorry? Like, what did you say?" She said, "I'm not doing that." I go, "What do you mean? It's the Incredicoaster. I've been talking this thing up all day long. We got here at 9 o'clock this morning. It's 11 o'clock at night. Like, what do you mean we're not doing this ride? Like, do you remember the fast pass that we got because the Goofy ride blew up? Like, we need to get on this ride. This is Jesus." All right, I didn't say that part, but what I did do my best of was convincing her that this ride was really, really going to be great for her. The problem was she said it was too tall. She said it was gonna be too fast. She didn't like the loop-de-loops and the swirls and all the different corkscrew stuff. She was just nervous as all get out. She was afraid of the ride. She was afraid that the ride would be too overwhelming and too much for her. And I did everything I could. I said, oh, it's not that fast, it's just quick. It'll be over before you know it. The loop-de-loops are gonna be smooth, they're gonna be fun. Like you can just close your eyes and boom, you're done. Like let's get on this ride. We have 4 fast passes and there's 4 of us, let's go. Well, after my clever convincing, she absolutely did not get on that ride. Didn't do it. She said, it's not happening. And I said, okay. So my son Lincoln, my wife Ashley, they got to ride the Incredicoaster. And I got to sit with my daughter Olive on a bench, watching her eat this monster ice cream sandwich looking thing because I felt bad because she felt bad about not getting on the ride. And then I began to feel bad because I began in that moment to recognize that she allowed fear to overcome some joy and some excitement that she could have experienced had she just taken the risk to get on the ride. Now, did I miss the ride? Absolutely not. The moment my son and my wife got off the ride, I got on the ride with some Australian woman whom I'd never met before in my life. And she was just in town for the weekend. I had a blast. But as I got off the ride, I still felt the same way. I felt bad that Olive missed out on that experience. She allowed fear to override the joy that was on the other side of her fear. And it began to kind of make me think about a question that I have for you this morning. What are we afraid of? What are we afraid of? For my daughter, it was the Incredicoaster. For me, it's failing. It's losing. It's letting people down. It's letting my family down. It's not putting my family or myself in a position for something better that I know is there. And it eats me up. And there are times where I feel shackled and I feel just where I can't really move forward and allow the fear of not doing what I know I need to be doing to help me take risks and move forward in my life. And maybe for you, maybe you have the exact same fears, but maybe for you it's a little different. Maybe there's some things that you've got going on in your own personal world that you just aren't willing to take a step forward because you're just too nervous of what the outcome might be, even though you know it might be better for you or it absolutely is better for you on the other side of just pushing through your fear. And I think for a lot of us, when it comes to our faith, I think a lot of us, we have a fear that a lot of times we're not willing to push through. There's just something about us and how we're kind of wired, and it's not a good thing necessarily, but it is a thing that keeps us from really growing up in our faith and our relationship with Jesus. And I think it's control. I think for a lot of us, we struggle with control. We want to be in control. We want to hold on to where we're going and what we're doing. And instead of going through this life in the relationship we have with Jesus, we do it with closed hands. We do it very timidly. And as a result, we're not maturing like we know we could and like we know we should. And there might be moments where, yeah, we're taking strides and taking steps, but there's this thing that gets in our way that keeps us from really moving forward. Maybe we don't know what it is. Maybe we haven't pinpointed it yet, but it's there and it's a problem. But the good news is that there is some good news. There's an antidote to this. There's a fix to the fear that many of us have when it comes to the control in the faith area of our life. And it's for us to understand more and more about who Jesus ultimately is. The one person that so many of us in this room have given their lives away to. The more we understand who he is, how he operates, how he cares about us, how he loves us, how involved he is in our life, and what he did for us some 2,000 years ago, the more we are considerate of that, the easier it is for us to push through our fear and our faith, to drop control and to trust him more, and for us to mature and grow in our relationship. And the reason why I share that with you is because it's true. It's just true. You see it throughout the scriptures. You see it throughout your life. There have been moments where you've taken major steps in your faith. Why? Because you had a clear understanding and a clear heart connection to Jesus. He is the antidote to all of our fear problems if we'd be so inclined to lean into him. And what I want to do over the next couple of minutes, several minutes I should say, is provide to you two contrasts, two responses to two interactions that Jesus had with two men and how they, one, got it right. I mean, he got it right. he responded positively to this invitation to a relationship with Jesus that ended up being the most joy-filled, unbelievable yes in all of the area in which he was in. And then there was this other guy who seemingly did the exact opposite. There is a choice we all have to make when it comes to our relationship with God, when it comes to fear, and when it comes to joy and what we know is better. And when it comes to Jesus, we have to remember and recognize who he is and make the right call. So what we're going to be this morning for a long period of time is Luke chapter 19. And it is my favorite interaction that Jesus has with anybody in the Gospels. If you have your Bibles, we'll be spending a bunch of time in there because we're going to talk about someone whom nobody liked, and yet Jesus interacted with him so uniquely. Luke chapter 1, verse 19, it says this: he, that's Jesus, entered Jericho and was passing through. There was a man named Zacchaeus who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. We're familiar with Zacchaeus, I'm sure. We probably remember the song from when we were little, if you were little when I was little. There was this tax collector in a place called Jericho, which Jesus was passing through. And he was the chief tax collector, not just a tax collector, and his name was Zacchaeus. And the reason why Luke records it like this way is because this is how Luke records things. If you aren't familiar with the Gospel of Luke, or Luke, the Gospel writer, he is a physician, a doctor. He is a detailed guy. He gave his life away to Jesus at some point during the ministry of Paul. He had spent a lot of time on Paul's missionary journeys. He began to chronicle the life of Jesus, and he wrote a 2-part chronicle called the Gospel of Luke and the Acts of the Apostles to a buddy of his named Theophilus. And he wants to make sure full well that Theophilus knows all the little baby details about all the things going on, and he is a master contraster in his stories. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But what we know right now is that Zacchaeus is not just a tax collector in Jericho, he is the tax collector. Jesus is not there to stay, but is passing through, and Zacchaeus is super duper rich. Verse 3, he was trying, that is Zacchaeus, to see who Jesus was, but he was not able because of the crowd, since he was a short man. Cue the song. So Zacchaeus has a problem. He wanted to see Jesus. This is his why about being there that day as Jesus was passing through. The problem was he could not see Jesus because the crowd was full of people that were like normal adult height, and he was not a normal adult height guy, so he had an issue. But that didn't deter him. Verse 4. So running ahead, he climbed up a sycamore tree to see Jesus, since he was about to pass that way. So Luke gives us more details. He tells us, hey, instead of him just sitting in his inability to see Jesus, he comes up with a plan. He runs ahead, climbs up a sycamore tree just so he can catch a glimpse of Jesus passing by. Now here's some significant things about this statement. Well, when you're a rich person in the first century, the last thing you ever do is run. You're not a runner. You're wearing things that keep you from smelling good if you run long distances. You've got long, heavy clothing on. You probably have jewelry on. You're also dignified in the sense that you are a rich guy. You walk. You're paced. You're taking your time. And if you're the chief tax collector, dude, your bling is everywhere. Everybody knows how rich you are. Everybody knows how nice you look. He might have been the most hated person in his town, and he was, by the way, and we'll get into that later. But for Zacchaeus to run, and then he had the ingenuity to climb a sycamore tree. Now, I don't know anything about sycamore trees in the makeup of them, biologically, but I do know the internet does. And here's what they said about a sycamore tree. They have very low branches. So instead of Zacchaeus having to shimmy up the trunk of some oak and then barely being able to make it because he was a short man, he was able to step on a low branch and just ladder himself up onto the tree to get a look at Jesus quickly before he passed by. So there's this moment in Zacchaeus where he is making some sort of shift and change. There is a humbling that is happening in Zacchaeus' heart and his mind because he really, really, really wants to get a glimpse of Jesus. Verse 5. This is what I like to call the turn. When Jesus came to the place, that is where Zacchaeus was posted up in that sycamore tree, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, because today it is necessary for me to stay at your house. Verse 6. So he quickly came down and welcomed him joyfully. And there it is. That's it. Did you see it? Did you see it? Jesus goes to the spot where Zacchaeus is. He looks up. He calls him by name, by the way, and I don't think he had a name tag on that said Zacchaeus, chief tax collector of Jericho. He knew who he was, either because of the notoriety that Zacchaeus had in the city, which, by the way, again, tax collectors back in that day, most hated people in your country. Jesus said, hey, hurry up and come down. I know you climbed up that tree quickly, but could you come down quickly? I need to go stay at your house. Now remember, Jesus was just passing through Jericho. He wasn't there to stay. And yet Zacchaeus is up there. Jesus is on the ground. He looks up and says, hey, I need to go hang out with you today. I need to spend time with you today. I need to have a meal with you today. These are all relational things. These are all invitations saying, hey, I want to be a part of what you're a part of. I want to know you. I want to get to know you better. I want to have an experience with you. I want to ask you some questions. I want to hear some stories, much like you do when you have friends come over to your house that you haven't seen in a while. Your friends come over, it's been a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. You're going to have a conversation. It's going to be lengthy, but you're going to listen intently because you care about that person. This is what Jesus was doing to the most notorious person in the city. He was inviting himself over because it was necessary, Jesus said. But the response, Zacchaeus' response, makes all the difference in the world. He welcomed him joyfully. There was a relational connection from Zacchaeus' side that said, I accept the invitation. I accept the invitation. And I don't just accept the invitation like, okay, cool, it's Jesus, fine. It's I accept the invitation joyfully. Now, I don't know about you guys, but like joy, it's different. Happiness is getting that, that chocolate ice cream cone on a Friday night at Baskin Robbins because you had a long week at work. Joy is that movie night with your family where you're all kind of settled in and everybody's got pallets on the floor and you're just watching that one movie that the kids have been begging you to watch for them and we're all laughing, we're all excited. Like that's joy. There's just a feel to it. There's a relational connection to it. It's not circumstantial. It's lovely. It's a good-hearted relational tie. And that's exactly where Zacchaeus was and Jesus was in that moment. Because there's something that happens when you really understand what Jesus is doing when he offers an invitation to you. And I began to think about that. And as I was kind of putting together this talk this morning, a long phrase kind of came to mind. And it's this. When Jesus invites himself over and you accept that invitation with humility, there is a radical change coupled with radical joy because of his radical grace. Let me say that again. When Jesus invites himself over and you accept that invitation with humility, there is a radical change coupled with radical joy because of his radical grace. And you know this to be true if you know Jesus. This is where Zacchaeus was. This was the moment where everything changed for Zacchaeus. Not everybody was happy about this change. Matter of fact, they didn't understand it at all. Verse 7, it says this. It says, all who saw it began to complain. He's gone to stay with a sinful man. Like the people in the crowd were like, wait, time out. What? Jesus, you can't hang out with this guy. He is a betrayer of his people. He is a chief tax collector. He's the number one guy in Jericho to take what doesn't belong to him and doesn't belong to Rome really and give it to Rome. Now remember, Israel was under Roman occupation. Rome needed money to keep the thing going. So they would hire tax collectors from within their own countrymen. And they would go around and basically pull money out of their little pockets and say, hey, this is for Rome. But Rome also had a plan too that said, hey, if we want the tax collectors to be happy, we need to make them rich. Well, the only way to make a person happy and make them rich is for them to take more than they actually need. So the tax collector was taking even more than what Rome was asking for. And Zacchaeus was the best of them, or I should say the worst of them. And these people knew it. He was a sinful man. He was the worst of the worst, and yet the best of the best had just invited him over to his house. There's something different when Jesus invites himself over. He changes you. There's a joy there because there's a grace that is beyond any comprehension that any of us can experience ever, short of himself. And Zacchaeus, he understood that. He got it. And here's how we know, verse 8. But Zacchaeus stood there and he said to the Lord, look, I'll give half of my possessions to the poor, Lord. And if I've extorted anything from anyone, I'll pay back 4 times as much. Now, I'm not a math guy. I'm more of a language guy. But I know what half is. And half is like 50%. Right? So Zacchaeus, in that moment, after he had come down from the sycamore tree, welcomed Jesus' invitation joyfully, here's this complaint from the crowd saying, Jesus, like, why are you doing this? Which, by the way, Jesus did this because this is what Jesus does. He couldn't care less about cultural norms. He couldn't care less about religious traditions. He cared about the kingdom. He cared about the heart. He cared about what was right. He is God. He knows what's right. He made what was right. So for him to invite himself over to Zacchaeus' house is completely proper in light of what we're going to read in a little bit. But what Zacchaeus did in this moment, by saying, hey, I'm giving away half of my possessions to the poor. And then if I've extorted anybody, any money whatsoever, I'm paying back each of them 4 times that much. Now, in order for these people, these tax collectors, to get rich, they had to extort people of their money. How much money do you think my boy Zacchaeus had by the end of the day, or the next day, or the next day? A lot of people. Jericho wasn't a small area. Zacchaeus became a very less rich person on that day than he was that morning. And he was willing to give up all of his possessions, his riches, everything, to follow after Jesus. Like that. He knew what he needed. And what was interesting is that Zacchaeus, 2 things. He pushed through his fear to see Jesus. But not only that, he pushed through his fear to be with Jesus. You catch that? He had to have been, at least at some point in his life, maybe that morning, afraid that all the riches could have been taken away from him, because they could have been. Something could have happened to him in his chief tax collecting scheme that he was trying to pull off, that it could have made him a very less rich person. He was greedy, never satisfied. And yet when Jesus was passing by and he said, hey, I'm coming to your house today, and he welcomed him joyfully, it changed everything for him. Because this is the proper response when you recognize and understand and are really taking in who this Jesus ultimately is. And Zacchaeus got it. But you know who didn't get it? As I was thinking about this and reading through this story over the last few weeks, there was someone in the previous chapter who did not respond quite this way. Are you guys familiar with the rich young ruler? We've talked about him before. Well, in the previous chapter, literally in my Bible, on the very previous page, there is this story about this guy who bumps into Jesus. Let's read it. Verse 18, chapter 18, it says this: a ruler asked him, that's Jesus, good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Why do you call me good? Jesus asked him. No one's good except God alone. You know the commandments: do not commit adultery, do not murder, do not steal, do not bear false witness, honor your father and mother. Verse 21, I've kept all these from my youth, he said. When Jesus heard this, he told him, you still lack one thing. Sell all you have and distribute it to the poor, and you'll have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me. Verse 23, after he heard this, he became extremely sad because he was very rich. In other translations, in other gospels, it says that he walked away very sad. Why? Because the fear of him losing his possessions, the fear of him losing control of his life, the fear of him really, truly following after Jesus was too overwhelming for him. He wasn't willing to see the joy and see what was better on the other side of his fear. And it cost him everything. I mean, the creator of the universe was staring right at his face. He didn't know what he lost. And he lost big. But you know who didn't lose big? That wee little man, Zacchaeus. The chief tax collector who welcomed Jesus in joyfully. And how do we know? Verse 9 of chapter 19 says this, "Today, salvation has come to this house," Jesus told Zacchaeus, "because he too is a son of Abraham." Verse 10, please hold on to these words. "For the Son of Man has come to seek and save the lost." A salvation took place on that road underneath that sycamore tree in Jericho some 2,000 years ago. The one who came to seek and save that which was lost, Jesus, had saved someone whom nobody thought could be saved. The worst of the worst, rescued by the best of the best. And it's a miracle. It's unbelievable. Zacchaeus was willing to throw all of it away, everything he had, to be with Jesus. Nothing else mattered to him but Jesus. And what was interesting is the way that Jesus kind of phrased in the middle of that culture, calling him a son of Abraham. It wasn't a Jewish tie, had nothing to do with his culture, had everything to do with his faith. The belief that Jesus was the rescuer, the belief that Jesus wanted to be a part of his life, the belief that Jesus is who Jesus is, and understanding to the degree in which he knew in that moment that this is who I need in my life more than anything else. There Zacchaeus is. Now, what do we do with a story like that? 2,000 years removed. Well, I think we need to recognize a few things. The first thing is this. If you don't know who Jesus is, if you don't have a relationship with him, like Zacchaeus was able to have in that moment, and for the subsequent days, the rest of his life into eternity, that opportunity is there for you right now. That Jesus is still seeking and saving those who are lost. And I know that to be true because when I was 13, he saved me. He rescued me. And there's probably somebody sitting beside you, close to you, that did the exact same thing for them as well at some point in their life. He wants to rescue you, save you. And what he did on that Friday by going to that cross was enough for you, for your sin, for your rebellion, for your rejection, for all the things. Because we are all sinful men and women in need of a Savior. Those in the house who know Jesus, it's time for us to push through some fear, to drop some control in our spiritual lives, to say yes to Jesus more and more daily, because even though we don't know what happened next in Zacchaeus' life, there's only 10 verses, by the way, in all of the Gospels that really talk about this guy. But we know that the next day and the next day for him was a bunch of doing and undoing. A bunch of doing more and more of what he saw Jesus do, and a bunch of undoing of what he used to do that was keeping him and dishonoring what it would be like to be in a relationship with God. And so it should be for us. Daily, pursuing Jesus, worshiping him, reading about him, confessing our sins to him, going to him and saying, hey, you love me because you love me. And I just want to keep growing in my relationship with you and being a part of this family of God that has been gifted to me by your grace. And we continue to move in that direction, maturing and growing. And the last little thing is that we need to begin to, especially if you know Jesus, live our lives with more and more joy. Joy is not circumstantial, it's relational. And the more we're connected to Jesus, the more we're okay with some of the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And by okay, I mean we're not allowing them to just throw us through the sky with happiness and then through the floor when there's some sort of thing that kind of hits us in the gut. We know that we have our Jesus. The Spirit of God lives inside us, and we can manage and weather the storms of life with not necessarily a smile on our face, but a peace in our hearts, knowing that Jesus is with us and he is for us. Because we have a world that is desperate to know how to handle the crazy, and this world is crazy, that we're experiencing in our lives each and every day. And imagine what it would be like if you gave your life away to Jesus, if you began to do and undo and trust him more and drop some control. And imagine if your life was just known for joy. This is the opportunity that we have. This is the proper response to being a follower of Jesus. And this is what Zacchaeus just simply got right. And I promise you, if you're willing to give your life away to Jesus, if you're willing to take steps of dropping some control and moving in the Lord's direction, if you're willing to have joy in your life be just your heartbeat, you'll be glad you did. I promise.